Welcome to Hamburgers Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and magic puzzle boxes in space. It's your boy Noah, and today we're looking at Hellraiser 4 Bloodline. Bloodline was released in 1996, 4 years after Hell on Earth. Bloodline is bold in concept. It attempted to explain the origin of the puzzle box, actually kill Pinhead and destroy the Cenobite's ability to leave Hell, as well as function as a direct sequel to Hell on Earth. The story has three main arcs, which take place in 1796, 1996, and 2127. We follow a toy maker and his descendants as they are hunted down by the Cenobites as they try to figure out how to beat them. Clive Barker, once again acting as an executive producer, wanted a fresh turn for the series after two straightforward sequels. Barker suggested a three-part film set in different time periods, and Peter Atkins, who wrote Hellraiser 2 and co-wrote Hellraiser 3, added the Le Marchand storyline, pulling it from Barker's novella. The original screenplay was ambitious, but when Miramax was unwilling to provide a budget to realize these scenes, the film was scaled back. Special effects technician Kevin Yeager was hired to direct, mostly to save money. Yeager was initially hesitant about taking the job, but he was impressed with the script and became enthusiastic after Barker described his vision for the film. This is one of Yeager's very few directing roles. He is primarily a special effects artist, and a damn good one at that. He and his company have created effects for Nightmare on Elm Streets 2, 3, and 4, Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, The Dentist, Face Off, The Master of Disguise, a series of unfortunate events, and a fucking ton of other movies. And most notably for me, he is the designer and maker of the Chucky doll in the original Child's Play. Gary J. Tunnicliffe, who had worked on Hellraiser 3, was also recruited to perform special effects. Tunnicliffe has also worked on a fucking ton of cool movies such as Candyman, Halloween Curse and Resurrection, Blade, Ginger Snaps, Pumpkinhead Blood Feud, My Bloody Valentine, The Collector, and Gone Girl. Tunnicliffe was worried that Yeager would want to perform the effects himself, but Yeager was excited to collaborate. Yeager himself only contributed to the Chatterer Beast. In Hellraiser 3, Doug Bradley's Pinhead makeup had changed to make it easier to apply and take off at the cost of increased discomfort. Tunnicliffe reverted to the old makeup, which he believed looked better. Tunnicliffe actually sticks around and performs makeup effects for every Hellraiser since 3 to date. Filming began in 1994. Problems began early and continued throughout production. Bradley called it the shoot from hell. The original cinematographer was replaced, the assistant director was called away on an emergency, several people suffered from illnesses, and the art department and camera crew were all dismissed the first week. Despite the issues, Hellraiser 4 was completed on time and within its budget. The initial cut of the film was shown to studio executives in early 1995. Miramax's reaction was negative, and the wanted changes required rewrites. Yeager declined to direct the new scenes and left their production, citing a lack of time and energy. Yeager said he also did not want to see the film slowly morph into a different product after spending so much effort on it. Yeager eventually had his name taken off the project, being credited as the infamous Alan SMITHEE. Bloodline ended up grossing $9.3 million on a $4 million budget, so while every Hellraiser film has at least doubled its budget, Bloodline was the final Hellraiser film to receive a theatrical release. The film was met with poor reviews immediately and consistently. It sits in the 20s and 30s on Rotten Tomatoes, the lowest so far. While I was admittedly a bit flexible with Hell on Earth, my patience has run thin with Bloodline. It is by far the weakest of the first four. This movie is a mess. They just tried to cram way too much into it, but there are definitely portions of good meat on the bones of this movie. So with that, let's jump in. We open on a space station in the year 2127. That's right, as promised, Pinhead is going to space. We see our protagonist, Paul Merchant, played by Bruce Ramsey, as he controls a robot with some fancy techno gloves. He is using the Lament configuration to, you guessed it, summon the Cenobites. But by using the robot, he technically isn't the one opening the box. We see that some space police have boarded the ship and are making their way to him. The robot solves the box, and his prize is explosion. Yay! The officers are just outside his room as they hear him talking to a demon. We get a glimpse of Pinhead through a screen, so we know he is on board, but the soldiers unfortunately do not. Through a serious exposition speech by one of them, we learn that Merchant is an engineer and has shut down the power in most of the ship, which he is both the designer and hijacker of. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce all of them right now, since the story is going to go all over the place before we really meet them. There's Edwards, who I believe is the captain, Carducci, Parker, Chamberlain, and Rimmer, who might be a psychologist and is tasked with interrogating Merchant. During the interrogation, Merchant says he is trying to end a game that has lasted centuries. He also says her deepest fears and much worse are aboard this ship. He describes the ship as a giant trap intended to catch hell itself. Rimmer says he can finish his work if he explains further, and he offers to go back to the beginning. Merchant takes us back to 1796 Paris. Merchant's ancestor, Philippe, is a well-known toy maker and has been commissioned to make the first puzzle box by a wealthy aristocrat named Duc de Lille. De Lille is apparently obsessed with black magic and the occult. Philippe followed de Lille's specific instructions perfectly, unaware of what the box was capable of. Very excited with the finished product, Philippe shows his wife Genevieve, who is unimpressed with the seemingly useless object. Deeply offended, Philippe runs off into the night to deliver the box. Genevieve asks him to stay, but Philippe says this will be the beginning of a better life for them and their future son, as Genevieve is pregnant. We meet de Lille and his assistant Jacques, played by a baby Adam Scott. They have lured in a peasant woman, notably one who hasn't been baptized. They tie her up and strangle her to death. Perfectly timed, Philippe shows up to drop off the box, for which he is paid and allowed to leave completely unbothered. But no, Philippe just has to know what they are doing for some stupid fucking reason, so he spies on them from the outside. He watches as they cut open the peasant woman, remove her skin, and hang her skin up with hooked chains. Then de Lille begins a chant incredibly similar to the chant from Child's Play to transfer souls. Things start glowing and shaking, and the box starts moving as a gross hole opens up in the floor. After a bit of increasingly intense chanting, the skin begins to fill and her black eyes open. De Lille has successfully summoned a demon, which they are now in control of, unless of course they stand in the way of hell. The demon's name is Angelique, who is pleased with her new body. Jacques is immediately infatuated with her. The next morning, Philippe tells his skeptical morgue friend what he saw. His friend tells him to simply design a machine to destroy the demons that have been summoned, and bam, a quick sketching montage later, Philippe has a design to destroy demons. Not sure how he would know how to destroy demons, let alone design a box that creates infinite light to do so, but fuck it, this is Hellraiser Bloodline. For some reason, he needs to go steal the puzzle box back for his plan to work. I'm not sure why he couldn't just make another box, or mind his own fucking business. So Philippe sneaks into the estate, not knowing Genevieve has followed him. Philippe finds that de Lille has been murdered by Jacques and Angelique, who are in the middle of some sexy time. He goes to grab the caterpillar-covered box, but de Lille gives one last angry breath before he dies. This was enough to get Angelique's attention, who is now clothed. Jacques is also now clothed and knocks him down and informs him that his bloodline will be cursed for eternity because he is the reason demons are able to walk the earth. Jacques orders Angelique to kill Philippe. Later that night, Genevieve is in the estate, only to find Philippe fatally stabbed. He tells her to leave him to protect herself and the baby. Paul explains Angelique had many more puzzle boxes made. While most of the descendants of the toy maker had no knowledge of this history, a few dreamed of puzzle boxes and demons. Then in 1996, one of the descendants was found by Angelique. John Merchant, also played by Bruce Ramsey, wakes from a nightmare of Angelique ripping his heart out. His wife Bobby wakes him and tends to their crying son Jack. That morning, Bobby insists he go see a therapist. John says these dreams have always haunted him and even haunt his work. He is also extra stressed because of some banquet he has to attend. We fly over to Paris where we find our favorite happy couple. I guess Jacques doesn't age now? That never gets expanded upon, don't really worry about it. Angelique finds John in a magazine and asks for Jacques' permission to go to America. Jacques, forgetting his lessons from de Lille, doesn't even ask why she wants to go. With that no, Jacques made the one mistake he couldn't afford to, standing in the way of hell. She has him close his eyes, and she reveals some new sharp demon claws, which she scratches him all to shit with. She bites a piece off his face and pins him up against the wall. She tells him the toy maker's bloodline has survived and she is going to America. Angelique rips his heart out and prepares to set sail. Back in New York, we are at that pesky banquet that John was talking about. We see that John has won an architectural award for the building they are in, which is the building from the end of Hell on Earth. It is covered head to toe in lament configuration designs, which I guess he dreamed of. He starts his speech when he spots Angelique in the crowd. He gets super flustered, ends the speech early, and goes home. Meanwhile, Angelique lures some dude down to the basement under the impression they're going to get it on. She tells the man to close his eyes. While doing so, Angelique busts through a cement pillar, pulling out the puzzle box from the last movie. I don't know how the box went from the floor Joey put it in to a pillar, and I guess at this point it doesn't matter because this box had nothing to do with John's designs. Just a happy Hellraiser coincidence. She has the man get down to his underwear and solve the box. The box flies away and grabs him with the old hook maneuver. A hole opens up in the wall and a chain launches out and drags the man away. But it's a tradesy as our boy Pinhead strolls out. The portal closes. I guess Pinhead is free to hang out, even though they got the guy who solved the box? Maybe because it's a high priority hell mission, I don't know. Pinhead is surprised to see Angelique. And I'm going to stop right here for a sec because I don't know how Pinhead and Angelique would know each other. She hasn't been in hell since 1796. Elliot Spencer didn't join until like the 1910s. My only guess is that the evil spirit of Pinhead from the last movie must be a much more long-term figure in hell, and it must have attached itself to Elliot when he arrived. In whatever case, Angelique is taken aback by Pinhead, who says hell has changed since she left. He says it is a lot more orderly and a lot less fun. So I take it that the Cenobites are a relatively new group within hell. Angelique is one of the princesses of hell. During her time, demons used a more subtle, seductive strategy to claim people, whereas the Cenobites prefer a much more violent, forceful approach. But back in the day, the lament configuration would have summoned a demon, not necessarily a Cenobite. Ah, the lore expands. Angelique gives Pinhead the scoop on what's happening, and Pinhead agrees to help, as this building is potentially a larger portal to hell. Angelique visits John at his office. She asks about Philippe's drawing on the wall. John shows Angelique that he is trying to make the drawing a reality, using mirrors and lasers to create an infinite self-maintaining room of light. This shocks Angelique. Apparently light is now a confirmed way to defeat the Cenobites? Okay. With a touch of the forehead, Angelique strengthens John's memory of Angelique. She claims they have a destiny together and leaves. Angelique actually wants John to finish this design, called the Elysium configuration, as she has grown used to life on Earth and has no interest in returning to the new kinky hell or following its rules. But that isn't explained very well in the movie. That night, John has a sex dream with Angelique, which I guess is better than having your heart ripped out. Her seduction tactics must be working. But his wet dream is interrupted by a phone call, which wakes him and Bobby. Angelique wants to meet with him tomorrow, to which he agrees. He shrugs off the call to Bobby, leaving her suspicious. Meanwhile, Pinhead is growing impatient with Princess Angelique's methods. He finds Angelique looking at herself in the mirror, which he is disappointed won't show her what she really is. But he knows. He can smell the exquisite stench. Ooh, and he's got them new hook acrylics. I see you, Pinhead, always up with the latest fashion. Then he gets all sorts of sexy as he sticks a hook in her chest, which she definitely likes. We meet these two idiot twin brothers who are security in the building. They find a door that isn't on their maps and they decide to check it out. They find a bunch of blood, which I think are the remnants of that guy from earlier. In a very cliche but sweet way, the twins remind each other that they always stick together. The poor boyos pull up on Pinhead and Angelique. They threaten to inflict pain on Pinhead and he gets so fucking offended, like really badass speech offended.
Gentlemen, I am pain.
He hooks and chains the brothers and acknowledges their biggest fear is for them to be separated. Pinhead promises that will never happen. Then one of those wacky hell machines comes out and drills and injects them with vague fluids. It's conjoining the brothers, but we won't get to see the finished product quite yet. Pinhead tells Angelique he is done waiting for her outdated techniques. He plans on hitting John where it hurts, by killing his son. Jack is played by Courtland Mead, who I recognized as Aha from The Little Rascals. Bobby heads out for a minute to do laundry. As she gets to the laundry room, she hears Jack scream and runs back upstairs. She finds him in the clutches of Pinhead, who says he wants live bait. John shows up knowing something is wrong, but I'm not sure how he knew. It briefly showed him meeting up with Angelique, and it was alluded to that they fucked, but it definitely seems like a scene or two was cut in between. He finds the magazine he is on the cover of with a knife in it. A clue! Bobby and Jack are in John's building. I don't even know what happens in this building aside from John's office. I'm just gonna assume other offices. Bobby grabs the puzzle box but is threatened by the Chatterer Beast, a new dog-like Cenobite. John shows up and heads to the 7th floor where they are being held, I guess. Oh look, the Pillar of Souls is back. The Chatterer Beast hops out, but Pinhead calms it. John wants his wife and son back. Pinhead will return them if John completes the building how Pinhead wants, so the portal will open for more Cenobites to come through. John and his family try to run. He puts Jack in the elevator and has Bobby take the stairwell, while he goes to take on Pinhead. Pinhead is tired of the Cenobites having to hide and leave like pests. He wants to open the portal permanently. Pinhead imitates Jack's voice yelling "Daddy," which sends him running to find him. Meanwhile, Bobby is running from the Chatterer Beast. She runs back into the room where they were being held, where she grabs the box. The Chatterer Beast is right up on her when she spits out a really shitty line and uses the box to send the beast away. I'm sorry, when the fuck did she learn how to do that? John finds Angelique has captured Jack, who she calls Tender, which I don't like. She demands John turn on the Elysium configuration to destroy Pinhead. Not sure why it wouldn't destroy her also, but the configuration is incomplete and fails. Pinhead is tired of all this tomfoolery and beheads John. But then Puzzle Master Bobby shows up and uses the box, which grabs Angelique and drags her back to hell with Pinhead. Back on the spaceship, Paul confirms Jack continued the bloodline. Paul says his blood talked to him in his dreams, telling him to finish the work of his family. Rimmer asks him what he was doing in the cabin when they found him. He says he was summoning demons, and that it was much easier than he thought it would be. Unfortunately, Rimmer doesn't believe Merchant, despite his insistence. He begs them to leave, but they will only leave with him. Edwards comes in to tell Rimmer they are heading out as soon as Parker finishes searching Paul's cabin, which Merchant warns them of, but they lock Paul up until their departure. Parker hears a little girl crying for help from the room where the robot summoned the Cenobites. He blasts the door open and Pinhead emerges and de-skins him. Pinhead overlooks Paul's artifacts and knows he has a plan. He tells his fellow Cenobites to kill everyone. We see Angelique has now been turned into a Cenobite, as well as the twins from 1996. The soldiers find Parker's body and go into high alert. Carducci is searching when human Angelique cries for help through a mirror. Angelique pulls part of him through the mirror and then allows it to cut him in half. Meanwhile, Chamberlain is greeted by Pinhead. He tries shooting him to no avail and runs. Chamberlain hides behind some pipes as Pinhead walks past, but the Chatterer Beast makes quick work of him. Rimmer finally decides to let Paul out as Edwards goes to look for Carducci. Paul tells him his gun won't help, so Edwards goes and finds the puzzle box, which he tries to use on Angelique and the twins, but he has no idea how it works and we get to see the twins unjoin. He summons his inner Kirsty and just fucking stands there as they surround and absorb him, I guess. Paul is pressing some buttons when he is found by Pinhead. Pinhead is excited to finally end this game. Paul distracts him with an image of Earth, which he starts fantasizing about being able to torture. Paul runs and finds Rimmer. He tells her to get on the escape shuttle and that he will try to meet her before it's too late. But Rimmer runs into the not-so-good boy. She gets it to the outside of the pod and presses a button that causes it to explode. I guess she released some sort of pressure gauge or something. You know, space stuff. Pinhead and Paul are back together as Pinhead reminisces on Merchant's ancestors. Pinhead describes himself as exquisitely empty, so Paul responds that it won't hurt him to die, which Pinhead insists he can't. But then Paul disappears. Pinhead looks so confused. I mean, I guess he's never seen a hologram before. A screen turns on and reveals he is on the shuttle with Rimmer. He presses a button and turns on the Elysium configuration, which is the ship itself. Light turns on all around the ship and bounces off mirrors. Pinhead starts getting fried as Paul says farewell. The ship turns into a giant box and explodes as Rimmer and Merchant fly away. And with that, Pinhead is dead. So, as I said, this movie is a mess. A ton of things don't make sense, but I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the massive changes the studio wanted. I don't know if the movie was better before, but it probably would at least leave me with less questions. But even without the studio cuts, this movie suffers from the same thing all the Hellraiser movies suffer from. They tried to do too much with too little. No Hellraiser movie has ever had the budget to show what Clive Barker has in his head, and sadly I'm not sure one ever will. I don't hate the premise of Bloodline. There are bits that are really promising. I really liked Angelique. I really enjoyed this battle of ideologies her and Pinhead had, so it was really a shame that she was completely shafted in the third act. Doug Bradley does a great job as always. Pinhead retained some of that good dialogue from Hell on Earth, so he stole most of the scenes he was in. Our 3-generation protagonist is fine, I guess. Them being played by the same actor doesn't do anything for me, and if anything it was probably a budgetary thing. The twin Cenobite is probably the worst yet. Once again, the idea is neat, but it just isn't scary, and the 90s CGI just wasn't ready, although the CGI isn't as bad as in Hell on Earth. Also, did Angelique and the twins die? I assume so, but we never see them after they kill those soldiers, so they don't even get a proper death scene. They were about as important as the fucking dog Cenobite in this act. Speaking of, the Chatterer Beast looks cool, but that's it. It's just here for shitty jump scares. And we are back to one of my issues with Hellbound, which is that some of the sets look really cheap, specifically the space station. This is my longest review so far, so you would think that means this movie has a lot going on. I know it took a lot of words to physically describe the plot points, but when you're actually watching Bloodline, it's actually pretty slow. It's the most bored I've been watching a Hellraiser film so far, and to me, boring is one of the worst things a horror movie can be. But just remember folks, it's still pretty much downhill from here. Up next is Hellraiser Inferno, our first of the 6 straight-to-DVD sequels. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for tuning into Horror and Hamburgers. See you next time.